This is Regained Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 133, Avoiding the Freshman 15.
We're going streaky! Yes! No, sorry. Sorry, we're going streaking through the quad and into the gymnasium. Come on, everybody!
Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainedwellness.com, and this is the Regained Wellness Podcast. And thanks so much for coming on out today and checking out the podcast related to a college issue called the Freshman 15, which if you're, I don't know, this is like, I think a North American thing. And the Freshman 15 implies that the average student starting their first year of college gains around 15 pounds because a lot of bad habits are taken over. Nutrition goes out the window. They have access to a lot of, crap. They're drinking more, the whole deal. So if you're from another country, I'm sure that has a translation in various places. But when I'm talking about the freshman 15, that's what it is. First year of college weight gain. And if you're not in college, there's still a lot of real takeaways here on how to avoid potential weight gain in general. And this might seem like a bit of a odd time, because school's already started, but I'll get all into that in a moment. So I just want to take a few seconds to talk about this thing I'm involved with called patreon.com. And if you're not familiar with that, Patreon's it's kind of like a crowdfunding thing, but a different format. And as far as people can, support, someone like me who's trying to put out podcasts and ideally put out more of them, improve the quality, better equipment, the whole deal. And it's like a monthly support system that starts as low as like $1 or $2 a month. And that way it helps, like I said, it helps to increase the input of the show. The more support you get, the more time you spend to lining up interviews and getting better guests and, equipment upgrade, that whole deal. So I won't go on too much about it. There's way more info at patreon.com/wellness. And that's got all the info I have about how you can support me if that interests you. If it doesn't, it's honestly no big deal. The show will always be free. But if you do support, with different levels, there's different reward things from, ebooks to nutrition guides to full-on nutrition coaching. And yeah, you can learn more. Patreon.com/wellness. So enough of that. Let's get right into this episode. Hey, like I mentioned, it might seem a little like that this type of show talking about, avoiding potential, weight gain and nutrition issues would be better before school, which I think it is. But I find this is the time of year where all this sort of starts to sink in a little bit. And it's kind of that Thanksgiving time. So here in Canada, we have Thanksgiving earlier than in the US. We have ours in October. And there's only like one or two people who seem to know that. So I appreciate you if you are aware of our Canadian Thanksgiving. And in the US, it's later in November. And this is the time of year I find where, looking back at college and, still knowing people that are in college or they're starting or whatnot, I find this is when, everything sort of sinks in and the effects of maybe eating poorly and not taking care of your health and stuff start to kick in. And that's when bad habits get to be established. So as much as, you want to go into school with that mindset of, being on top of things, this is kind of a good time for a refresher or a reminder to not let it get out of hand. Because I find this is when it starts to happen. You've settled into a routine, and now we're getting into later into the year and the weather changes and people are cooped up more inside and they're more likely to turn to garbage food, and exams come and stress levels go up, and into the Christmas season and the whole deal. So I find this is a good time to address this whole issue and kind of nip it in the bud, as a reminder of steps and things you can take to avoid potential weight gain and health issues through school. But this also applies if you're out of school, and here's some reminders and things you can do to help avoid it in general. So I'm going to start with some things you can specifically do, not just in college, but in your everyday life to avoid potential weight gain. So I'll go through various tips here. So the first one, and I'll say this all the time, is slow down the time you spend eating. And in college, I mean, this goes hand in hand. You're running all over the place. You're so busy that meals are like either eaten on the go, or you have like 2 minutes into your, I don't know, depending if it's like a food court or cafeteria or whatever you have, or even if it's in your room, you're eating, standing up or in class or on the way to class or whatever. And this is one of the biggest things that leads to potential overeating and potential weight gain, as well as a lot of big digestive issues and digestive disorders. Because when you eat too fast, you just, you don't break down your food, you don't chew it properly, you overwhelm your digestive system. It can lead to, cramping, bloating, gas, nausea, the whole deal when you're going way too fast. The other thing that happens when you eat too quickly, you override those natural fullness signals, those natural, satiation signals that come when you're naturally full. So, your stomach has these stretch receptors on it, and they can signal the brain, okay, we've had enough, we're full. But those take a little while to kick in, roughly around 15 to 20 minutes. The average person eats a meal in around 3 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. Even time yourself. You're probably not aware how quickly you actually eat, but time yourself. And if it's an hour, unless you're sitting down like a family dinner and whatever, I guarantee you're probably eating within 3 to 5 minutes, if not even quicker, honestly. People can nail down meals in 30 seconds. So when you do this, not only is this havoc on like the digestive system and your gastrointestinal system and the whole deal, but you end up overeating because you don't feel full. So you've probably, consumed enough food to satiate you, but because you ate it too quick, your brain hasn't recognized you've had enough. So you still feel, you notice like if you eat a meal and you still feel hungry, and it's quite a lot, or it's, junk food related or whatever, you've probably had more than enough calories, but those stretch receptors haven't been able to do their thing. So be conscious of taking more time to eat, and, set up your timer on your phone or keep your eye on your watch or whatever, and take at least 15 to 20 minutes to finish your meal. That way you're going to make it easier, digestion and absorption wise, but you might not even eat as much as you were planning, and you're less likely to overeat and go for more. And this is big if you're in a college where it's, all the schools are different, but if it's sort of a cafeteria buffet-ish style where you can, kind of load up, you're more likely to go back to get more or take something else on the way. And this, over time really adds up. So yes, set up that timer, set up the phone. If you're out eating with people and you don't really, if you don't have the option of having to slow down and take your time eating because it's a group thing and you got to be on your way, at least be the last one to finish eating. And you'll do yourself a lot of favors as far as avoiding an overabundance of calories. The next tip, kind of related as far as avoiding overeating, but kind of keeping hunger under control, is when you do eat, wherever it is, breakfast, lunch, dinner, whatever, focus on proteins and vegetables first. We tend to eat, as a society, our meals tend to be more starch-based, whether they're pastas or potatoes, rice or whatnot. And I don't know, it's different for everybody, but you might start eating those first. Those are really, in a lot of cases going to increase hunger, because when you start eating, a starch or a refined carb, and if it's, assuming on an empty stomach because you haven't eaten for at least 2, 3, 4 hours, you get a little more of that hormonal response, a little more of a blood sugar spike that can increase hunger. It can make you even hungrier in the whole process, because you tend to be eating quicker as well too. Basically, if you start with protein and vegetables, these are the things that help promote fullness and are going to keep you fuller, quicker. The things that promote fullness are protein, water, fiber, and healthy fats. And that's why you want to focus on them first, because then you'll avoid probably in most cases, some form of starchy carb. And if you're looking to avoid weight gain, decrease some body fat, you do want to cut down on non-starchy vegetables. You want to eliminate, obviously, like refined sugars and refined grains and refined carbs, But, even the white rices and pastas and white potatoes, these things are going to, in the long run, cause increases in body fat. They, related with that hormonal response as far as the insulin releases, and insulin serves as a fat producing and storing hormone, and carbohydrates are just the enemy to blood sugar. And they're going to cause you to overeat more. You're going to have those blood sugar crashes. You're going to end up in more cravings and stuff. So it's okay to have them. And again, it depends on your activity level. If you're more active, if you're athletic, if you're involved in fitness, they definitely have a place. But again, then you're looking at ideal carbohydrate sources, which are going to be things like, again, depending on what you have access to, but like brown rices, wild rice, oats, sweet potatoes. Regular potatoes, again, can be okay too. Quinoa is awesome. It just tends to be available in more and more places. So, that's when they can have a place as far as if you're very fit and you're very active. If you're not, and this tends to be the case in college, because you're really not doing a lot. You're spending all day sitting in classes, libraries, studying. The energy you need is not that much. Obviously, you need some, but you want to avoid overeating on these things that you're not going to potentially burn off. When you're ingesting all these carbohydrates, your body's like, oh, energy source, it needs to burn them off. And if it doesn't, they're more likely to be turned into body fat as a reserve sort of backup energy source. So to avoid overeating them, or getting too much when you don't need them, focus on protein and vegetables first. They'll fill you up better. They'll keep those hormonal levels a little more at bay, and they'll help prevent the potential overeating of the calories that are more likely to be turned into body fat. Next tip, again, related with that, a lot of these all go hand in hand, but start, at this time of year, if you're noticing, okay, now I'm noticing some weight gain happening because of college. It's only been a couple months, but, the majority of, potential terrible foods are starting to have their effect. This is when you want to start replacing grains with greens. So again, it's related that you probably don't need as many carbs as you think, especially if your day's spent very inactive. So in any meal where you would probably have like a pasta or a rice or whatever, start having greens instead of that. First, to avoid that excess of carbohydrates. Second, to get a little more, obviously, nutrition. The problem, like if you eat a lot of, say, white rice or pasta, there's some minerals in them. There's, a little bit of protein. There's a little bit of magnesium or whatever. But when it's a white pasta or a white rice, it's a refined product that has been kind of degraded down and stripped of all its nutrients. So you really don't get a lot from them. So except for this abundance of energy in the form of glucose, which, again, if not used, turns to body fat. But because there's not a lot of nutrients, you can eat these huge plates of pasta and you're still starving an hour or 2 hours later, because of those blood sugar spikes, but also because your body is not necessarily getting the nutrition it believes it deserves. So it's the same thing like if you eat bags of chips or I'll get into fast food later, but Oreos or any form of junk crap product, you're taking in a ton of calories, but you're not getting any nutrition. So you're starving yourself kind of on a cellular level. So your body's still going to want nutrients. It's still going to crave the food it thinks it should have had. So that's the problem with the pastas and the rices on top of it. So when you start replacing the greens, like when you start putting them in place of the grains, you're getting all those nutrients. Especially the darker the green type of vegetable you can get, the better, especially like leafy greens. The darker green you can get, the better. And that darkness indicates a deeper concentration of nutrients, like phytonutrients that are, the antioxidants, minerals, everything like that. So when you are eating those greens, you're getting that abundance of actual nutrition. Again, it's low calorie. You can eat the stuff by the truckload and it's not going to lead to weight gain. And it's going to help fill you up because it's full of two of those things I mentioned, fiber and water. That's, what makes up a lot of the vegetables, and that helps promote fullness. So your best bet in situations where you might have had a huge thing of pasta or rice, and God, as much as I love it, Chipotle is all like, tends to be rice based, but you can get wraps instead. That's when you want to fill it with vegetables and stuff like that, and the proteins and whatnot. But ideally, if it's something where you normally go for a pasta or rice or potato, go for the greens. And that's why salads can be so good and actually so filling. And it's one of my go-to things, where take a bunch of, again, depending on what's available, some places will have salad bars, some will have ready-made ones. But if you find something with dark leafy greens, whether it's kale or spinach or Swiss chard, or even spring mixes and arugula and parsleys and cilantros and whatever, mixed in with a ton of other vegetables like cucumbers and tomatoes and mushrooms, red onion, whatever else you can think of, with some sort of grilled chicken on top, and then ideally a non-commercial based salad dressing. If you can get your own or make your own or have access to, every restaurant or cafeteria or salad bar in the world pretty much should have some form of balsamic vinegar and an olive oil of whatever that you can mix yourself, or it's already ready made. The fewer the ingredients the fewer the ingredients, the better. And ideally something you can just whip together on your own because it's available right there. You don't even have to mix it up. Pour the balsamic, pour the olive oil. In that one meal, you've got all those things we just talked about that promote fullness, and that help you avoid overeating. You got the protein, you've got the fiber, you got the healthy fats from the olive oil, and the water, which makes up a majority of all those foods. Most foods are 70% water anyway. So those things are going to keep you from overeating. When I can eat a lot, when I make salads like that, honestly, I'm good for 5 to 6 hours. Even throw some avocado in it. There's some more healthy fats. Throw some diced up hard-boiled egg. Throw that into it. It's sometimes I'll eat that at 7 o'clock at night. I'm still full the next morning. These things are so dense. The calorie issue wise, it is going to contain a decent amount, but when the base of it is a majority of these dark leafy green vegetables, they're relatively low overall. So the amount, the bulk of the food is actually quite low in the calories, but it's so fullness promoting and going to help you avoid overeating, and to combat weight gain and hopefully prevent body fat gain. Okay, next in avoiding the freshman 15, and again, all these things I think apply to everybody regardless of you're in college or not, is keeping your water intake high. Many of us are walking around dehydrated, and you can usually tell if your urine is, darker colored. It should be more of a lighter straw color. If there's a noticeable odor, even if you just find yourself thirsty, there's a good chance you're slipping into dehydration. It's not that you're you're not screwed. You're going to eventually drink water and kind of bounce back. But when you find yourself, sort of dead thirsty, you're getting a little too late, as opposed to if you were staying on top of it and sort of being proactive with your water intake. And this is just going to help things run a lot better. Your water intake is so important for not just hydration, but digestion, circulation, transport of nutrients, cognitive function. They find a lot of students who are dehydrated are not performing as well in tests and exams as opposed to kids who keep themselves hydrated. And there's a lot of studies that look at this. So just your ability for memory and memorization of facts and whatnot, you want to make sure you take on that, just so you're getting your money's worth out of the place. The other thing being, when you're dehydrated, the signals of thirst are sometimes confused with hunger, and people turn to food, and it tends to be a little more the, inferior, quick acting food in your body, which is kind of an instant energy hit, refined carbohydrates, refined sugars and stuff like that. So when you stay on top of your water intake, you're less likely to have these sort of odd hunger pains, which are kind of non-existent in the first place. You'll be less likely to crave other things and sugars, and your body will function a little bit better. And it's just something you need to stay on top of. It's easy to forget through the day. I'm very conscious of how much water I should drink, and there's just times that go by and you're like, oh crap, I haven't had a drink of water in hours. And especially in school, and if it's your first year or even near the end of school when it's even more intense, you're running around all day. I mean, at least if you can keep a big water bottle with you, you can stay on top of it. And I think people are pretty good with that nowadays, but just be aware, if you want to know how much you should be drinking, it's taking half your body weight and turning that into ounces of water, and that's how many ounces of water you should drink a day. And then if you divide that by 8, that's how many cups of water, and you can take it from there. So if you weigh 150 pounds, taking out my calculator, just kidding. There's college education at its best right there. So that would be, if you're 150 pounds, 75 ounces of water a day, that equals around 8 or 9 cups. And the average, large glass is going to hold, that's a measuring cup, like an 8-ounce measuring cup. So the average glass is going to hold around, maybe close to 2. So it's really not that hard to get that much in a day. I would suggest starting your day, the minute you wake up, either keep it by your bed or just make that the first thing you do, is get a large glass or 2 of water. Ideally, squeeze a little bit of lemon in there. That's going to help as well with cleansing, detoxification, digestion, and just the fact that you've been basically dehydrated for the last 8 hours. Well, in college, you're probably sleeping 3 hours, but the fact is you've got an extended period of time without water. So you want to kick off that hydration for the day. And then that's, you sort of knock out a few of those glasses or that water requirement right off the bat, and then get to the regular intake through the day. I've seen some people just take larger bottles and they'll mark on the side lines and times, so they know by like 2 o'clock I've got to drink this much, or say starting in the morning, by 10 a.m. I have to drink down to this level, or by noon it's got to be down to here, by 6 o'clock I have to be down by there. I don't know if that might seem a little neurotic, but if those are some things that can help people stay on top of getting into good habits, it's definitely worth doing. Okay, next thing in avoiding weight gain. Okay, let's just get into this now, the whole drinking issue. It's impossible to avoid. I mean, drinking and secondary education and college and university are basically the same word. They go hand in hand. And it's not that you have to deprive yourself of this experience. It's just making smarter choices to stay on top of it. Everyone forgets what a high calorie source alcohol is. We all know that the things that contain calories are protein, fat, and carbs. And protein and carbs have 4 calories per gram, while fat has 9 calories per gram. And everyone is usually unaware that alcohol is right in the mix too. It contains 7 calories per gram. It's right up there with fat. It's, almost double what protein and carbs have. And you have to recognize it as a legit energy source as far as caloric intake. And it can lead to huge weight gain, not to mention the fact, I won't get into the whole alcohol thing here as far as the damages that it cause inflammation wise and, liver issues, streaking through the quad, hence the Will Ferrell intro. So just purely from a body weight, body fat standpoint, that's why alcohol is so tough, especially beer. As much as we all love beer, when you're drinking beer, you're drinking liquid bread. That's what it is. It's super absorbed in the body. It's like an instant, it's like rocket fuel in your body, not just as far as what it does to you, but as far as how it impacts you hormonally. The alcohol plus it's like I said, liquid bread. It's from that carbohydrate barley source, and it's liquid, so it just skyrockets your blood sugar. It leads to easy weight gain. And you tend not to just have one beer, you have 18 or whatever, and pounding those the whole time. It's a huge amount of calories. It's a huge amount of refined liquid carbohydrates. So when people look at the freshman 15, I mean, a lot of the times it's because of alcohol intake. The other problem, when you tend to have, beer is a lot of the time the go-to choice, whether it's frat party related or pubs or whatnot. And, when people on a budget, they're going for, depending where you live, if you live in the States, it's like Natty Ice, or here in Canada, we have Lakehead, or in England, it might be Stella or White Light. No, that's a cider. You know what I mean? The cheapest forms of alcohol. Say in the States, with a Bud Light or any mass-produced beer, they're so full of other preservatives, A lot of times in the case with some of the Budweisers, they're even adding in like high fructose corn syrup, and the hops they use are a synthetic source, again, full of so many fillers and additives that, again, they're kind of robbing your body of any potential, not that we're looking at nourishing yourself, but any benefits that can come from actual real beer. But you're getting, again, all these things that can lead you to other hunger issues or cravings, or that they're using some of these corn syrups in them or whatnot. If you have a real good craft, microbrewery beer, like a legit brewed one, at the very least, like a Sam Adams in the States, but like a real ale or a real stout or whatnot, you can actually get a lot of decent nutrition actually from them, because the brewing process is slow. It's genuine. It's using quality ingredients. If you look at craft brewers and microbrewers, they're using only the best ingredients, like real, malts, like real roasted malts, and real like good organic hops and cleaner waters, and real natural yeast. And these things actually have some nutritional value. The problem is, if you consume too much, again, you're getting that quick liquid carbohydrate. But and then these things are a little more expensive, so they tend not to be the go-to. If you're drinking beer, like I said, go for a really high-end craft beer and do yourself a little favor. But a lot of the time it tends to be these, just crappier keg-based chugging pitcher beer pong, Coors Light, Natty Ice, the whole deal. So at the very least, go with the light beer. Less calorie-wise, it's still full of additives and fillers. But that's, I can't tell people what to avoid and what not to avoid. But that's just the issue with beer. The other thing, too, is a lot of drink-based, like if you're at bars, clubs, whatever it is, the go-tos tend to be liquors and sugar-based drinks. So like vodkas and whatnot with Cokes and fruit juices and high sugar intake. So you got that combination of the calories from the alcohol, the calories from the sugar. It's rapidly absorbed. There's your weight gain. When you're pounding these 2-3 times a week over the course of a school year, it adds up big time. So the things you can do, best liquor choices are going to be, probably first off is gin. It's the lowest calorie of the liquors. And tequila, actually, you might not be a big fan, but tequila is another good choice, especially if you have any, gluten intolerances, celiac. That's the best one to go to. Mix wise, the one thing, a lot of people will mix these drinks with like Diet Cokes and whatnot, and so artificial ingredients and artificial sweeteners. That's a whole issue. I'll link up a couple shows I did just on that if you want to learn why these things are so horrific. So that'll be at the show notes today, which is regainedwellness.com/133, and I'll link up some other specific episodes. The problem with the Diet Cokes and stuff like that is, since there's no sugar to absorb the alcohol, so it kind of, it's not that it slows the release, but it does take a little bit off it. When you're having something that has no calories and no sugar, you're basically doing straight shots of whatever liquor is in your drink. So if you're drinking like a vodka Diet Coke, you're basically taking just straight shots of the vodka with like a little bit of water, which isn't going to slow down the absorption. And then people get drunker way quicker when you do stuff like, if you had a drink like that compared to if you had one with regular Coke, because the sugar and all that slows it down a little bit. So, if you're able to keep on top of yourself and you're not going too nuts, if you go with like something like a gin and a soda water, and then depending where you are, that might be a seltzer water, but like a sparkling water, and you're only having like a couple, that's your best choice as far as keeping the calories down, because then it's just the calories from the liquor. And then, if you have some like fresh squeezed lemon or lime, little bit of cleansing in there, not a ton, but a tiny bit. And the better choices, if you're going for something to mix it with, is something at least with some nutrients in it, even though juices aren't ideal, but going with something like a pineapple juice or a real cranberry juice, not like a crappy cran drink punch, which is all sugar, but like a tart real cranberry juice. Like pineapple. What else is good in there? Maybe grapefruit juice. Just, something that's got a little bit of vitamin and mineral content to it, just to do yourself a favor, as opposed to having just refined high fructose corn syrup soft drinks or whatever. So, I mean, that's a whole big issue, but just be aware of what an impact alcohol does, not just to us physically and whatnot, but like what it can do body fat wise and health wise, and that the stuff really adds up. So that's probably all I'll say on that. It's kind of making the best choices possible in whatever situation you're in. Okay, next thing I'll get into, which is again goes hand in hand with college, would be fast food. And depending on, if you go to like a large size university, the university I went to, University of Western Ontario, now called Western University, which doesn't make any sense because it's in the western part of Ontario, which is on the east coast of Canada. So it's hard to be a Western university when you're on the east coast, whatever. That was a big school, like 30,000 plus. I mean, I don't know how that ranks compared. In Canada, that's a pretty big size school. So the bigger the school, the more access you have to food courts, cafeterias, and the whole deal, and then more access to fast food. If you're like on, living on campus and have, I assume meal cards, they, depending on the school you go to, they can be good at not just the stuff in the school, but like areas nearby. So the school I went to, some of the fast food shops took the meal cards, which, they'd be stupid not to because they're in a student area. So fast food is obviously a huge problem, and it's too easy to get. It's too easy to consume. It does taste good and makes you crave more of it. You want more all the time. And when you link up a lack of activity level, higher alcohol consumption, more likely to turn to fast food, you can see why the freshman 15 is, surprisingly not the freshman 50, with how much you could pack on weight wise in just one semester, 1 year. So if you have access to a real good food court where there's health, where you can do your own buffet stuff and you can, choose what you get, that's half the battle right there. Like, I talk about replacing grains with greens and getting more proteins and vegetables and healthy fats. That's awesome. You can do that. Fast food wise, if you're stuck, it becomes a little more complicated. These days, places like, say, McDonald's or Wendy's, or I don't know, whatever's out there, they've made it a little more easier to make health conscious decisions, and there's better options on there. So at the very least, it's like avoiding the fries and get a salad there instead. Or if they have like a baked potato, do that. If it's a burger, whatever. If you want to be really health conscious, take the bun off it and just consume the meat and the vegetables that go with it. Instead of obviously the soft drink, just go with water. And then it's not that bad. You can actually find some decent stuff. Like even McDonald's you can get apple slices, even like a yogurt parfait. Not ideal, but better than a lot of the choices on there. If you're going to, again, I have no idea what's available depending if you listen to this and you go to school, what's available to you, but you're probably aware of what you can, what's maybe best on the menu health wise. And there's so many different fast food companies, it's hard to start. Or you might have like a sandwich place, so you can at least load up on, vegetables, decent proteins if they have them. Try to avoid the white breads, just making the best decisions possible. If you're going out, I mean, pizza is going to be a staple, obviously, of university life. You can make pizza kind of healthy too. If it's, being made for you and delivered, at least try to ask them to do like a super thin crust. I mean, this shouldn't be a big deal. I mean, even Domino's and Little Caesars and places like that, they do make their pizzas a lot of, by hand. A lot of the time, sometimes they are pre-made, but if you're going out to get one, or it's where they're actually making it, get a super thin crust. Say do it as thin as possible. And I've worked in Italian restaurants, and this is very doable. So then you really cut down on the carbohydrates and the starch. Then ask for an olive oil and garlic base. Again, that's pretty straightforward as far as pizza making and should be very doable. So you're going to make it a little, it's not that tomato sauce isn't healthy, but a lot of the tomato sauces are basically ketchup. There can be a lot of sugar. And, when you go to an olive oil, you get a little bit of a healthier, those monounsaturated fats, which are good for, again, helping promote fullness, avoiding overeating, and then they can help with, your body's ability to burn fat and all sorts of stuff. And they kind of work as anti-inflammatories and the whole deal. And garlic, and mix that into the base, and then load the thing up with as much vegetables as possible, and then maybe some chicken and whatnot. And then, you know what? That's not a bad meal at all, honestly. And I would say if you were stuck between having to get, say, fast food burger and, I was talking about like getting the side baked potato and a salad and water, I'd honestly say the pizza would be the better choice if you can control what goes on it. Get super thin crust, again, tons of vegetables. You can even tell them like go easy on the cheese if you want, or add in some feta or whatnot. So you can make it okay. So it's just about making the best decisions wherever you are. So if you're out with friends, or if you're just getting pizza to take back with you to your dorm or to your house or wherever you live, make those good decisions and try to make them as healthy as possible, because it's better than the alternative, which can always be worse. Basically, in whatever situation you are, just look at it and see what's the best I can do. So you can always make a better choice, and you can always make a worse choice, depending on the food or the location. So, go for those best choices possible. Okay, and last thing I'll say, a last tip, which is, again, ridiculously obvious, try to exercise more. Try to be more active. When you have a ton of papers due, when you are in exam crunch time, it can easily slip out the window. And I get that. Like, I've been there. It's just making things a priority. And you're probably having access to very good gyms. I mean, campus facilities are usually incredible, and they're basically free or part of your tuition or whatnot. So, and they're local and they're right there. So it's easy to come by them. When the time of year comes where you're overwhelmed and stressed, this is actually when you want to exercise more, not just to combat, potential body fat gain, but to improve, lowering stress levels from all the stuff that's going on, enhancing your cognitive function. You need your brain at you at all times. So the more you exercise, the more you give yourself the ability to improve your learning and your memorization and stuff like that. And, even if it's walking and you're not big on the gym, take like longer routes to get to class. Make it a point to leave earlier and walk longer to get wherever you are. Take a longer roundabout way to get to it. Or make time, if when you have set blocks in your schedule, make that your workout time. Just be more active. If you think, like, I've seen this so many times, like people who are super active in high school, they're playing like 3 sports and they're going all day, practices at lunch and after school and games in different leagues. And then they go to university and their activity level just drops and they do absolutely nothing because they're not playing a varsity sport or whatever. Or, you can join rec leagues. I think that's a good idea too, to be active. It's a good social thing. But the majority of people's activity level just comes to a screeching halt because they've been so used to being that active, and then it just sort of turns off. So try and keep on it. You don't have to do exactly what you used to do, but find those places where you can at least do some moderate exercise. If you used to work out 5 times a week, at least try to go 2 or 3 times a week. Hopefully that'll motivate you to keep going and get back into it. And again, if you don't like exercise, you don't like fitness, just make sure you're on your feet more often than not. Try not to go more than 2 hours straight of sitting. Ideally, even every half hour, try to get up for 30 seconds. The longer you spend sitting, the more you turn off these enzymes in the body that, I think it's lipoprotein lipase. Sorry if I got that wrong, biology people. But the longer you sit, you turn off that enzyme that can burn body fat, and it makes it more likely that you'll gain fat. So when you're more active, you allow those, sort of mechanisms to take place that can help you in combating and burning off body fat. So keep yourself moving. It's good to have step trackers, whether you have a Fitbit or you just use the Heart Health app on your, that's iPhone or any kind. There's tons of apps for just tracking your steps. And, the 10,000 steps a day is a good goal. It's not necessarily about that's what we have to physically take a day, like what we're designed to. The idea came up that, and I think this was actually probably started by Fitbit, just to have a number to focus on. Basically, 10,000 steps a day is roughly what it takes to burn around 500 calories. So over the course of 7 days, that's 3,500 calories. And if you know where I'm going, you remember how many calories are in a pound of fat, 3,500. So by this logic, if you're taking 10,000 steps a day, over the course of a week, you'll burn a pound of body fat. And, you'll keep going from there. So, I mean, that's a good rough goal. It gets a little more complicated from that as far as calorie math and the whole deal, but it is a good goal, and it encourages people to move around and take more steps and be conscious of where they're at. Again, you probably, if you haven't tracked your steps before, you have no idea how many you're taking a day. You might be thinking, oh, I'm taking like 5,000 and it'll probably turn out to be like 1,500. So these are good as far as helping you prevent that time spent sitting, and keeping you up. It's you hear people talk about like sitting is the new smoking. I wouldn't go to that extent, but it is very harmful to us. We're just not meant to sit as much as we are. We're meant to be up and moving around. So, a step tracker can be beneficial for that. So it's just making those times in the day, or getting up early, going for walks, or later in the day. There's lots of times where you can sort of plug in exercise. And, if it's during those crunch times, it's okay to reduce it, but trying to stay on top of it. And it's kind of all these things together, all these different nutrition tips and this health tips, and making sure you get enough sleep is huge in avoiding excess weight gain and the freshman 15 and that whole deal. It's something I've covered a ton. If you've subscribed to the podcast, you can see even recently all the podcast episodes I've done related to sleep. But here's the quick summary. When you don't sleep enough, your body thinks some sort of stress or trauma is happening. Or else, why wouldn't you be sleeping? It just doesn't know that you're up dancing on bar stools at 3 in the morning, or that you're cramming at 2:15 a.m. for your psych exam or whatnot. It's totally irrelevant. It doesn't know if it's that or some sort of famine or environmental trauma or attack. It just knows you're not sleeping, and that raises your stress hormones in the body, primarily cortisol. And this makes weight loss almost not impossible, but very hard to do. These stress hormones make it more likely for you to gain fat because your body wants to preserve and hold on to excess energy. It doesn't know when it's going to eat again. It doesn't know what it needs for backup energy, for fight or flight, the whole deal. So when you don't sleep, stress hormones up, weight gain goes up, weight loss goes down. It makes it so tough to stay on top of. And I know it's so hard in college, but making sure you're getting, the 7 to 8 hours of sleep is a good goal, and it might not be practical sometimes, but if you can really make it a priority, it'll make avoiding that weight gain so much better. And, if you're listening and you're not in school, everyday life as well too. So definitely check out those episodes. I'll link them up in the show notes today, regainedwellness.com/133. Just way more info on the issue with sleep and how important it is. Okay. Let's cut it off there. I think that's a lot. Hopefully that's some good stuff to take away. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, primarily iTunes, I imagine, but I'm pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts. If you really like it, give it a rating and review. It gets more people exposed to the show. And like I said, if you're interested in the whole support thing, check out patreon.com/wellness. And I'll link that up in the show notes too. And just, you can see about the different levels of support. And, I support some people on Patreon, some YouTubers that do nutrition work and stuff too, just because I really believe in what they're doing and I like to support them. And it's just like, some of them are like a couple bucks a month. It's a really cool new platform that I really think allows and helps people to keep producing content and, helping people, whether it's through podcasts or YouTube or, music, art, whatever. So, okay. So that's it for me. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you very soon. Have a good day. Bye.
88 miles per hour!